Neuroscience has discovered something unsettling. The same region of your brain that lights up when you experience physical pain also activates when you face social rejection, uncertainty, or fear of failure. Your brain does not clearly distinguish between a broken bone and a broken ego. That is why you avoid difficult conversations. That is why you postpone your dreams. That is why you stay where it is safe. But here is the paradox science reveals. Avoidance strengthens fear. Exposure rewires it. Studies in behavioral psychology show that gradual exposure to what we fear reduces amygdala reactivity over time. In simple words, when you walk into the cave, the monster shrinks. And the treasure. The treasure is the person you become when you stop running. Today we explore a truth as old as myth and as modern as neuroscience. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Fear feels like a stop sign. It rises in your chest like a warning siren. Your palms sweat. Your heart accelerates. Your thoughts begin to whisper, turn back. This is dangerous. And most of your life, you have obeyed that signal as if it were law. But what if fear is not a wall? What if it is a map? Think about it carefully. You fear public speaking. Your throat tightens at the thought of standing before others, exposed, seen, judged. But perhaps your growth is tied to your voice. Perhaps there is something inside you that needs expression, an idea, a truth, a perspective, and the fear exists precisely because the voice matters. You fear rejection. You avoid confessing your feelings, applying for the opportunity, sharing your art. Yet your growth is tied to vulnerability. The very thing you resist is the doorway to deeper connection and self-respect. You fear failure. You procrastinate, you hesitate, you overthink. Yet your growth is tied to action. The movement itself is the medicine. Modern psychology quietly confirms this ancient truth. Researchers at Stanford found that when individuals reinterpret anxiety as excitement, their performance improves dramatically. The racing heart, the adrenaline, the heightened awareness, these are not enemies. They are energy. The difference lies in meaning. When the mind labels the sensation as threat, you shrink. When it labels it as challenge, you rise. Fear, then, is not an obstacle. It is untapped fuel. The cave is not random. It is not placed in your life by accident. It appears exactly where your unlived life waits. It stands at the edge of your comfort, guarding the next version of you. And that is why it feels so intense. There was a young entrepreneur who carried a business idea for 3 years. He refined it endlessly. He redesigned logos, he rewrote plans, but he never launched. Not because he lacked intelligence, not because he lacked resources. He lacked permission from himself. He feared humiliation. He feared people saying, "You tried and you failed." Eventually, the tension of not acting became heavier than the fear of acting. He stepped into the cave, he launched, and it failed, publicly. The sales were disappointing. The feedback was brutal. For a moment, his worst fear materialized. But something unexpected happened. He did not collapse. Instead, he gathered data. He learned what worked and what did not. He discovered weaknesses in his strategy. More importantly, he discovered resilience in himself. 2 years later, his second venture succeeded, not because fear disappeared, but because he understood it. The first cave did not contain gold. It contained courage. And courage is worth more, because courage changes identity. When you avoid fear, you reinforce the belief that you are fragile. Each retreat whispers to your subconscious, "You cannot handle this." Over time, that belief becomes your prison. You design a smaller and smaller life to avoid discomfort. You choose safety over aliveness. You choose predictability over possibility. But when you step toward fear, even imperfectly, something shifts at the core of you. You begin to see yourself differently. You think, "I was afraid, and I moved anyway." That sentence rewires you. It builds quiet self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of power. Fear is a compass because it points toward expansion. The areas where you feel the most resistance often conceal the most potential. The trembling before a difficult conversation may signal the growth of your boundaries. The anxiety before a bold decision may signal the birth of independence. If there were no significance attached to the action, there would be no fear. Children are not afraid of meaningless things. They are afraid when something feels big, important, transformative. Your fear reveals importance. This is why running from fear never brings peace. It only postpones confrontation. The unspoken words remain lodged in your throat. The unlived dream becomes quiet resentment. The avoided risk transforms into regret. And regret is far heavier than fear. Fear is momentary. Regret is enduring. When you begin to see fear as information rather than threat, your relationship with it changes. Instead of asking, "How do I eliminate this feeling?" you begin asking, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" Perhaps it is showing you where your voice wants to emerge. Perhaps it is showing you where your authenticity has been suppressed. Perhaps it is showing you that you are standing at the edge of growth. The cave does not appear to punish you. It appears to initiate you. And the initiation is not about external success. It is about internal expansion. Every time you walk into fear consciously, you reclaim a fragment of yourself that was hidden behind avoidance. You realize that the wall was never solid. It was a doorway. And on the other side is not just achievement, not just applause, not just visible reward, but the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you are larger than your fear. That knowledge is the real treasure. There are parts of you that you refuse to see, not because they are evil, not because they are monstrous, but because they do not fit the image you have carefully constructed for the world. You want to be kind, so you bury your anger. You want to be humble, so you deny your ambition. You want to be confident, so you hide your insecurity. You want to be generous, so you pretend you never feel jealousy. But what you suppress does not disappear. It waits. It waits in the dark corridors of your psyche, gathering strength, jealousy, anger, neediness, the hunger to be seen, the quiet terror of being average. You push them down because they threaten your identity. You have built a persona, a version of yourself that is acceptable, admirable, safe, and anything that contradicts that image feels dangerous. So you exile it. Yet the exile does not die. Psychological research on emotional suppression reveals something profound. When you consciously push emotions away, your body's stress response increases, your heart rate rises, your cognitive performance drops. The mind becomes fragmented. The energy required to maintain repression is enormous. You are not eliminating the emotion. You are spending your life holding it underwater. And what happens when you hold something underwater long enough? It eventually explodes to the surface. The cave you fear is often not external. It is not a career move or a public risk. It is internal confrontation. It is the moment you sit alone and admit what you have been denying. It is admitting that you crave recognition more than you pretend. It is admitting that you are afraid of being ordinary. It is admitting that when someone else succeeds, something inside you tightens with envy. These confessions feel shameful. You think, if I were evolved, I wouldn't feel this. So you judge yourself, and judgment drives the shadow deeper. But here is the paradox. What you resist internally begins to control you unconsciously. The man who denies his ambition criticizes others for being too ambitious. The woman who denies her anger becomes passive-aggressive. The person who denies their need for validation becomes obsessed with appearing independent. The shadow does not disappear. It leaks, and it leaks in distorted ways. But the moment you turn toward it, without condemnation, something extraordinary happens. Jealousy, when faced honestly, reveals desire. If you envy someone's success, perhaps you want to create. If you envy someone's confidence, perhaps you want to express yourself more boldly. Jealousy is misdirected inspiration. It shows you what you value but have not yet claimed. Anger, when examined consciously, reveals violated boundaries. It tells you where you have said yes when you meant no. It tells you where you have tolerated disrespect. Anger is not the enemy, unconscious anger is. When integrated, anger becomes clarity. It becomes strength. It becomes the ability to stand firm without cruelty. Insecurity, when acknowledged, becomes humility. It reminds you that you are human, It softens arrogance. It opens the door to growth. The person who admits, "I am afraid I'm not good enough," is already stronger than the one pretending invulnerability. This is the treasure hidden behind the shadow. Integration. To integrate means to stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. It means saying, "Yes, I am kind, and I have anger. Yes, I am humble, and I have ambition. Yes, I am loving, and I sometimes feel envy." When you do this, the inner war begins to quiet, and you may not realize how much energy that war was consuming. Every day, you have been performing, managing impressions, policing thoughts, suppressing impulses, editing yourself. That fragmentation drains vitality. It creates tension in the body. It creates confusion in decision-making. You feel tired, not because life is heavy, but because you are fighting yourself. The treasure is not perfection. It is wholeness. When you stop fighting your shadow, your energy returns. The force that was once used to repress becomes available to create. The tension that once fueled anxiety becomes grounded presence. You no longer need to prove that you are good because you have accepted that you are complex. And complexity is human. There is immense freedom in admitting, "I am not purely light." Because once you accept your darkness, no one can weaponize it against you. Criticism loses its sting when you have already faced your flaws. You become less reactive, less defensive. You respond rather than explode. The shadow guards the treasure because it demands courage. It demands honesty. It demands that you dismantle the illusion of who you thought you had to be. But on the other side of that confrontation is integration, the reconciliation of opposites within you. You are not divided anymore. You are whole, and when the inner war ends, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes clearer. Your relationships become more authentic. Your actions become aligned. You stop chasing validation because you are no longer hiding. You stop projecting blame because you recognize your own complexity. You stop fearing exposure because there is nothing left to conceal from yourself. The cave was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reunite you. And the treasure it guards is the most valuable thing you can possess, your undivided self. Avoidance feels safe in the short term. It wraps around you like a blanket. It whispers, "Not today, maybe later. Stay comfortable." And in that moment, it works. The anxiety drops. The discomfort fades. You convince yourself that you made the mature decision, the practical decision, the safe decision. But safety can be deceptive, because what you avoid does not dissolve. It lingers. It waits. It grows roots beneath the surface of your life. The conversation you avoid becomes resentment. Every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, something inside you tightens. You smile outwardly, but inwardly you begin keeping score. Weeks later, the smallest irritation triggers an explosion that feels disproportionate. It is not about the present moment. It is about all the moments you refuse to face. The risk you avoid becomes regret. You tell yourself it was unrealistic, impractical, not the right time. But late at night, when the noise fades, the question returns. What if I had tried? That question can echo for years. The dream you avoid becomes self-doubt. Not because you failed, but because you never attempted. And there is something uniquely painful about unused potential. It feels like betrayal, not of others, of yourself. Psychology offers a clear explanation. Exposure therapy, one of the most effective treatments for phobias and anxiety disorders, is built on a simple principle repeated. Controlled confrontation reduces fear. When someone afraid of heights gradually exposes themselves to higher places, their nervous system learns something powerful. The feared outcome does not occur, or if discomfort arises, it is survivable. Strength is not built by thinking about fear. It is built by stepping toward it. Avoidance teaches the brain that the threat is too large to handle. Confrontation teaches the brain that you are larger than the threat. Consider someone stuck in a stable but unfulfilling job. The salary is reliable. The environment is familiar. The dissatisfaction is constant but tolerable. They fear leaving because of uncertainty. What if the new opportunity fails? What if they lose stability? What if they are not good enough elsewhere? So they stay. Years pass. Dissatisfaction becomes a background hum. They numb themselves with distractions, scrolling, entertainment, complaints with friends. They convince themselves that adulthood requires compromise, that dreams are for the naive. But the fear never leaves. The cave remains at the edge of their mind, like a door slightly ajar. Every time they see someone pursuing passion, something stirs inside. Not jealousy, something deeper, a reminder. Eventually, the discomfort of stagnation outweighs the fear of change. They update their resume. Their hands tremble slightly as they hit apply. It is a small action, almost invisible to the world. But internally it is seismic, because identity shifts. They are no longer passive. They are no longer merely surviving. They are engaging with possibility. Whether they get the new job immediately is secondary. The real transformation happens the moment they confront the fear. They begin to see themselves as someone capable of action. And that shift changes everything. The treasure is not guaranteed success. The treasure is self-respect. Self-respect is born when your actions align with your deeper truth. When you say, "I am afraid, but I will move anyway," that sentence rebuilds your relationship with yourself. You cannot hate yourself into confidence. Criticizing your hesitation, shaming your fear, comparing yourself to others, these strategies only deepen paralysis. Harshness does not produce courage. It produces avoidance. But you can act yourself into confidence. Action creates evidence. Each step toward discomfort becomes proof that you can survive uncertainty. Each difficult conversation builds the muscle of honesty. Each risk taken, regardless of outcome, strengthens your inner foundation, and slowly, the voice inside you changes. It no longer says, "I hope I can handle this." It begins to say, "I have handled things before." Avoidance shrinks your world. It teaches you to design your life around minimizing discomfort. You choose relationships where you do not have to be fully seen. Careers where you are not fully challenged. Dreams small enough to guarantee safety, but a small life does not protect you from pain. It only protects you from growth. Confrontation, on the other hand, expands you. It forces you to encounter parts of yourself you did not know were strong. It reveals resilience you did not know you possessed. It shows you that fear is intense but temporary, while regret is quiet but enduring. The cave does not demand perfection. It demands presence. It demands that you step forward, not because you are certain, but because you are willing. And with each confrontation, something subtle yet profound occurs. Your spine straightens a little more. Your voice steadies. Your decisions become clearer. You begin to trust yourself, not because life becomes predictable, but because you have proven to yourself that you will not abandon your own growth. And that is where true strength is born. The cave is different for everyone. This is where many people become confused. They look at someone else's fear and think, "That's not so hard." Or they look at someone else's courage and think, "I could never do that." But courage is not universal in appearance. It is deeply personal. It is contextual. For one person, the cave is starting a company, leaving security behind, risking financial instability, facing the possibility of public failure. For them, the fear is external: markets, money, reputation. For another person, the cave is apologizing, swallowing pride, admitting they were wrong, risking vulnerability in front of someone they hurt. For them, the fear is internal: shame, rejection, the collapse of ego. For someone else, the cave is going to therapy, sitting in a quiet room and speaking truths they have never spoken aloud, confronting childhood wounds, questioning inherited beliefs, facing the uncomfortable reality that healing requires responsibility. And for another, the cave is ending a toxic relationship, walking away from familiarity, choosing loneliness over disrespect, breaking cycles that feel strangely comfortable because they are known. Courage is contextual. A soldier entering battle and a child admitting they lied are both walking into caves. The scale may look different from the outside, but internally, the trembling feels the same. The heart races. The mind searches for escape. The ego tries to negotiate safety. You cannot compare your cave to someone else's. because you do not live inside their nervous system. What paralyzes you may be easy for another. What terrifies them may be natural to you. The only comparison that matters is between who you are now and who you could become if you walked forward. And here is something rarely spoken. Sometimes the cave is success itself, not failure, not humiliation. Success, you fear your own potential because if you truly try, fully, honestly, without excuses, and you fail, there will be nothing left to blame. No distractions, no half efforts, no convenient narratives about not really caring. Playing small protects the ego. If you never fully commit to your gift, you can always tell yourself, I could have done more. That illusion feels safer than discovering your limits. Because discovering your limits feels final. It feels like judgment. Psychological research on self-handicapping behavior reveals that many people unconsciously create obstacles for themselves. They procrastinate before important exams. They underprepare before opportunities. They arrive late. They make excuses why. Because if they fail, they can attribute the failure to the obstacle, not to their ability. It feels safer to say, I didn't really try, than to risk saying, I tried my best and it wasn't enough. But living half-heartedly is its own prison. When you shrink your ambition to protect your ego, you also shrink your experience of life. You choose manageable goals instead of meaningful ones. You speak softly when you want to speak boldly. You hide talent to avoid criticism. You dim yourself so that if things collapse, it will not hurt as much. But it still hurts. It hurts in a quieter way. It feels like restlessness, like watching others live fully while you remain partially engaged. It feels like potential turning into frustration. It feels like knowing you are capable of more, yet refusing to test it. The cave of success demands a different kind of bravery. It asks you to stop pretending you are small. It asks you to take your own gifts seriously. It asks you to risk visibility, and visibility is terrifying. Because when you are visible, you can be judged, you can be criticized, you can fail publicly, but you can also impact, inspire, and expand. The treasure hidden in this cave is authenticity. Authenticity is not loudness. It is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is when your outer life reflects your inner truth. When your actions match your values. When your ambitions are no longer disguised as indifference. When you stop shrinking, something unexpected happens. You discover how much space you were meant to occupy, not in a room, not in social media metrics, but in your own life. You realize that the fear of standing fully in your potential was never about capability. It was about identity. You were attached to being the safe version of yourself, the underestimated one, the one with hidden talent, the one who could have been. But when you step into your cave, whether that cave is confrontation, therapy, risk, or success, you begin to shed that outdated identity. You stop introducing yourself to the world as smaller than you are, and something within you relaxes, because pretending to be small requires constant effort. Authenticity does not. The cave is different for everyone, but the transformation is universal. When you walk into your specific fear, you reclaim territory inside yourself. You expand the boundaries of who you believe you are, and the world may or may not change immediately. But you will. You will stand straighter, speak clearer, decide faster. Not because fear disappeared, but because you stopped measuring your life against someone else's cave and started entering your own. Many people walk toward the cave with a secret expectation. They imagine that once they gather enough courage and step inside, they will find happiness waiting like a reward chest in a video game. Open the door, defeat the fear, collect the prize, and finally peace. But that is not how it works. The cave does not hand out comfort. It reshapes you. What you find inside is not applause. It is confrontation. It is the dismantling of illusions you have carried for years. It is the slow, sometimes painful shedding of identities that once kept you safe. You lose the version of yourself that needed constant approval. You lose the fantasy that life will one day be free of uncertainty. You lose the belief that you must be perfect to be worthy. And losing these identities can feel like death. Because in a way, it is. You are letting parts of yourself dissolve. The masks, the coping mechanisms, the narratives that once protected you. You realize that some of your ambitions were built on insecurity. Some of your relationships were built on fear. Some of your habits were built on avoidance. The cave strips you of illusion. It forces you to see what is real, and for a moment, that can feel disorienting. You may think, I entered this to feel better. Why does it feel harder? But what is happening is deeper than comfort. Something fundamental is shifting inside you. You become less fragile. Before, rejection felt like a verdict on your worth. A single criticism could ruin your day. A small failure could spiral into self-doubt. But after facing your fears directly, after surviving discomfort consciously, you begin to understand something powerful you can endure. You become less reactive. When someone challenges you, you no longer explode or collapse immediately. There is space between stimulus and response. That space is strength. It is born from knowing your shadow, from confronting your insecurity, from walking into uncertainty voluntarily. You are no longer fighting to protect a brittle image. You become less dependent on validation, because you have already met yourself in the dark. You have seen your flaws, your envy, your ambition, your fear, and you did not run. When you have faced yourself honestly, external judgment loses some of its power. Praise feels pleasant but not necessary. Criticism feels uncomfortable but not catastrophic. You become grounded. Grounded not because life is easy, but because your center no longer shifts with every opinion. You are anchored in something deeper than approval. You are anchored in experience, in resilience, in self-trust, and this is the real treasure, inner solidity, the kind that cannot be taken by rejection, the kind that survives failure, the kind that does not collapse under criticism. Inner solidity is quiet. It does not announce itself loudly. It is felt in the way you carry yourself, in the calm tone of your voice during conflict, in your willingness to try again after falling. It is not arrogance. It is stability. History offers countless examples of individuals who walked into terrifying caves and emerged transformed. Nelson Mandela faced imprisonment for decades. The cave did not give him comfort. It gave him endurance. It stripped away illusions about control and replaced them with clarity about purpose. Entrepreneurs who risk bankruptcy do not enter a world of ease. They enter a world of uncertainty that forces them to develop resilience, adaptability, and courage. Artists who endure ridicule do not find immediate validation. They find a deeper commitment to their craft. In each case, the cave did not remove struggle. It revealed strength. And this is the misunderstanding many people hold. They think transformation means life becomes softer. In reality, transformation means you become stronger. The storms may continue. Criticism may persist. Loss may still occur. But you respond differently. Before transformation, struggle feels like proof that you are inadequate. After transformation, struggle feels like part of the path. Before transformation, you avoid discomfort at all costs. After transformation, you understand that discomfort is often a signal of growth. Before transformation, your identity is fragile. After transformation, your identity is flexible. It can bend without breaking. This is why the treasure is not comfort. Comfort can be taken away. A job can be lost. A relationship can end. Applause can fade. But inner solidity remains. It remains when you are alone. It remains when you are misunderstood. It remains when plans collapse. Because it was forged in confrontation. The cave does not promise happiness in the simplistic sense. It promises depth. It promises maturity. It promises that you will no longer be ruled by every passing fear or opinion. And when you emerge, you may notice something subtle. The world looks the same, but you do not. You walk differently. You choose differently. You speak differently. Not because the struggle disappeared, but because you discovered that you are larger than the struggle. The cave did not make life easier. It made you stronger. And that strength, quiet, grounded, unshakable, is the treasure you were truly seeking all along. Right now, there is a cave in your life. You know where it is. It whispers to you at night. It shows up in moments of envy. It appears when you see someone living the life you secretly want. Your mind says, "Not yet." Your fear says, "Stay safe." But your deeper self knows, growth is rarely comfortable, but stagnation is far more painful. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, not because it contains magic, but because it forces you to meet the most powerful force in your life, your untapped self. And once you meet that version of you, there is no going back.